everybody. My name is Will, and welcome to another review here on Alpha Omega Wolf Productions. So, this is a movie that I honestly forgot about right up until Jessup brought it up. We're going to be reviewing Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. The movie, not the game. So, this movie was released in 2010. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal and Ben Kingsley. And this is, I guess, one of the slightly better versions of the video game movies, because this movie's not good. I will say that.
Yeah, it starts. I'd say even though it's very different from the game, it starts very it starts okay. It doesn't start awful.
Yeah.
Now
this movie wasn't very well received by critics or audiences, and this movie had a budget of $200 million, which we will get to in a moment, but it only made, it didn't even make half of its money back, I think.
Yeah. So Will and I also talked before we started this review. You know nothing about the series, right?
Next to nothing. Okay.
I do. So when I was a kid, I saw the advertising for this, and I thought, okay, this looks kind of cool. And for something, my instances kicked in, and I could tell this was based on a popular franchise. So I looked back and discovered the games, bought used copies of all of them. I'm missing my copy of Sands of Time, which is why I have Warrior Within and Two Thrones. And I love these. I think these are great. What inspired me to ask us to review the movie is because I pulled out my old PS2 and started replaying them. I had to skip Sands of Time, sadly. Not everything I'll say about them holds up, but they are fun games still.
No, and I remember talking to Jessup during the movie. I was like, these are the step above the movie, right? And he's like, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about what we did like about this movie first. And honestly, I can only really count them on one hand.
Yeah. One thing, so first off, you should know in the games, the prince's name is never given, and they give him a name of Dastan here.
Yes.
Also, other characters have different names between game and movie. What was her name? Tamina?
Tamina, yeah.
Yeah, Tamina was Farah in the game. And the character's supposed to be of Indian descent. Anyways, in game, the prince and Farah have wonderful chemistry. It is great. That chemistry still holds up. It is wonderful. I especially when this relationship starts out between them, it's not that hard to screw that up. Which Tamina and Dastan do have solid chemistry at the start, but by the end of the movie, it just falls apart. It's just bad chemistry.
No, it just feels really forced because they don't like each other at first, but then almost out of nowhere, they start liking each other more. It's like, where did this even come from?
Yeah. And
I also wanted to say that
I also want to add,
okay, go
the
ahead.
Prince and Farah start out the same way. They're on opposite sides of the conflict, so they don't get along at first, but because they're pretty much the only ones left, they're kind of forced to work together. Yeah. And that's how you build their chemistry. And there's even still some backstabbing between them in the second half of the game.
Speaking of backstabbing and betrayal, there is a twist that happens in this movie that is so blatantly obvious, but yet the characters are idiotic to even try to piece it together.
And again, this was frustrating for me because even though the prince does fall for tricks and stuff, he is tricked into doing things a lot. He's still very smart. He can figure things out for himself. Especially in Warrior Within, where he's pretty much alone for the majority of that game. He's still smart. He starts thinking ahead, and you see him evolving, despite becoming much more of a hardened warrior in between games.
No, and honestly, I wish for some of the other characters, with the exception of Dastan and Tamina, I wish we got a more character development out of everybody else, because it just felt empty. Whenever they're on screen or whenever there's supposed to be an emotional moment, I just don't feel anything really.
Yeah, and this is not what the game was. The Prince and Farah were great.
By the way,
even when they reunite in Two Thrones, they still have good chemistry there.
Mm-hmm. By the way, speaking of the video game, I could have sworn that's what we were watching, because let's talk about the CG a little bit.
Oh my gosh. The CG.
It's
Oh,
it's not good. We will put it
yeah.
bluntly.
It was laughable.
It was laughably bad. Like, there were a couple set pieces I liked, and there were a couple shots I liked, but the CG was just not very good. And like I said, this movie had a budget of $200 million, and yet they couldn't make some decent CG here.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to point out is like when it came time for the action scenes, like there was just a bunch of jump cuts, zooms, and like a bunch of choppy editing that it was just hard to tell what was going on.
Ugh. Um, and that's not what the game is. The closest thing I could think of to what this was a reference to from the game
Yeah.
is in game sometimes when the prince kills an enemy, not usually a boss, but this is like a grunt or something. It will like go slow mo for a second. Not every time,
Yeah, but this movie
but that's
really
the closest thing I could think of that this was trying to do.
overdoes the slow mo, I think. So
Yeah,
there,
the game does this really well. Like, so, and some of those, especially because Warrior Within and Two Thrones are much more mature games. There are some nasty deaths in those games. I think I was like my first like unrated game I ever got.
hmm,
Um, Especially since my parents kind of try to stay within age restrictions for my games.
understandable.
Yeah.
So, is there anything
Yeah.
else we wanted to add, or
I will say check out the games if you can. I heard something about a Sands of Time remake, which I
yeah,
am interested in.
hmm,
Um, you can find Let's Plays on YouTube if you need to, but these games are so much better. The one thing I will say is that I am thankful this game, the movie introduced me to the games.
hmm,
If you notice, both copies of my Prince of Persia games are used. I had to get these secondhand, but
yeah,
still, I love these a lot.
yeah. I might check out the games at some point if I can find them anywhere. So next
These are
week,
PS2. I don't know where else they are.
right.
Also, skip the Forgotten Sands and the 2008 reboot.
All right. So next week we're going to. It's kind of up in the air. We're kind of figuring that stuff out. But I'll text Jessup with more details on what can be done.
Yeah.
So that's it for this review. If you did like it, then be sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're new, subscribe for more content. And we will keep you guys updated on our channel updates for next week and the upcoming weeks as well. So until next time, see you later, Posse.
Okay. Postscript. One thing I want to add is I'm also thankful they did not do a movie to Warrior Within, even though that technically might have been Disney's first hard R. Just given the CGI we had in this, I would have hated to see what the Dahaka or the Sand Wraith from Warrior Within looked like.
Mm-hmm.